Porsche's been in the sports car game for quite some time now. And it's amazing how well they've done when their premier car has the engine hanging off the ass. So back in the 90s, Porsche decided to do something different. They took that engine and put it midships and made a car called the Boxster. Convertible, midship engine, awesome car. A couple years after that, they came out with the Cayman, which is a coupe version of that car. Then, in 2015, they announced a really special car. It was the Cayman GT4. That was the first time Porsche took a mid-engine car and sent it to their GT department to tune it up for the track. That car was amazing. So how do you follow that up? You do a 718 Cayman GT4. You know, this car is, well, it's amazing, first off, but it is the epitome of sort of Porsche thinking and the Porsche way, you know? You take something that was really good and you make it better. If you've watched Auto Exotica TV, you saw that we spent an episode on the GT4 and its stablemate, the Boxster Spider. The Spider was a little different though. The underpinnings were not the same. It was softer than the GT4. The GT4 was more the track car, and the Boxster Spider was, you know, the everyday fun car that you could go out and make noise, hoon, and shred tires. But they were great cars. Then Porsche came out with the 718, and they put 4-cylinder engines in those cars. Now, what Porsche can do with that 4-cylinder is freaking amazing, but they lack that sound, they lack that guttural feel, and they lack the thrust that the naturally aspirated flat 6 has. So everybody was wondering, would Porsche do another GT4? Because it has the ability to do something Porsche doesn't like. It steps on the toes of the 911. So the question is, was the GT4 a one and done? Obviously not. So last June, Porsche just sent out a press release. Say hello to the 718 GT4 and 718 Spider. And I was blown away. Now, with more power, more aerodynamic efficiency, better everything. So, you've got a 4-liter now, flat 6, versus the old 3.8. It's the same 4-liter flat 6 that's in the 911 Carrera S. But they take the turbos off, and they do some German engineering technical wizardry inside, and deliver 414 naturally aspirated horsepower and 309 pound-feet of torque. And to get that power, you have to go way up in the rev range. And redline on this car is 8,000 RPMs. What does 8,000 sound like? That's 5. That's 6. That's 7. We're not even at 8 yet. So, what else makes a GT car? Sport suspension. This is 1.8 inches lower than a 718. And what does it do? Well, with a lower ride height, more power, and a little stiffer suspension, what do you think it does? It turns incredibly crisp, because unlike the 911, which has its engine tail wagging way in the back, this engine's right here, behind my elbow. And if you want to go fast and you want to go fast around corners, where do you want your rotational mass? You want it right in the middle. And that's why this car is such a threat, because the balance is absolutely stunning. The way you can place this into a corner is, I mean, it's telepathic. You don't even have to really work this steering wheel, which is actually really nice to touch. And in this one, it's covered in leather instead of Alcantara. But you don't have to work this wheel hard to go where you want to go. You don't have to think about where you want to go. The car just kind of knows. The whole point of the GT4 is balance. It doesn't have the most horsepower. 414 is a lot, but it's not like a lot. A GT3 has 500. Don't even get started on the 911 Turbo S, right? So the whole point of this car is to carve corners the absolute best way that you can. So what about improvements over what was already a fantastic car? How about a whole new aerodynamics package? Porsche's GT department took lessons they learned with the GT4 Club Sport, which is a racing version of the previous 981 generation Cayman GT4, and applied them to the new 718 GT4. The aero kit that you see on this car contributes to 50% more downforce than the previous model. That's amazing. One of the first things the development team did is added these air skirts right here in the front. Air comes in through the nose, out through here, and makes the air around the wheels clean and less turbulent. This also contributes additional downforce over the front axle. Then you have this picnic table rear wing. The former GT4 had a big wing too, and like that one, this is adjustable with these little guys right down here depending on the track that you're on. But the design of this wing with the winglets on the end, 20% more downforce than the old wing. The old GT4 had a center-mounted rear exhaust. The centerpiece to Porsche's new aerodynamic package on this GT4 is this awesome diffuser down here. So what happens is air comes in from the front, there's some magic wizardry stuff that happens underneath the car, and air is channeled in and around under the body, and then out through this diffuser. This diffuser contributes 30% more downforce over the rear axle than the previous generation GT4. You add up all of those new aerodynamic efficiencies, and this GT4 lapped the Nürburgring 12 seconds faster than the old GT4. In fact, this little car is faster around that racetrack than Porsche's famous Carrera GT. When this car first came out, there are some new restrictions in Europe for exhaust. So Porsche had to put this whole other sort of emissions system into the exhaust. And one of the detriments to that was a loss of some sound, right? One of the greatest joys of the Flat 6 is the aural symphony that it plays. Nothing else sounds like a Porsche Flat 6. Nothing. So people complained about this noise, but I think it sounds just fine. I think it sounds fantastic, in fact. You're not going to get any complaints from me about that noise. Could it be a little louder? Sure. And it really comes on at about 4,000 RPMs. That's where the noise really comes. If you're below that, it is a little more muted. It's a little softer. But boy, you get above 4,000 RPMs. This is 5,000. It just sounds maniacal. And the thrust, it's just there. That's one of the joys of a naturally aspirated engine. The power is just there when you want it. You don't have to wait for turbos to spool up or for a supercharger to force feed some air in there. You just have power. The balance through the carousel here is just amazing. Oh, the way it rotates around you is just magical. So good. This car handles so well, it's stupid. Porsche's always been good at brakes, and you can get ceramics on the GT4, carbon ceramic brakes, or you can get traditional steel rotors. This car has the steel rotors. I don't know how you could possibly get any better brake feel than what this car offers. If you feather them, it just sheds off a little bit of speed. If you press a little firmer, it's a little more grabby, just like brakes should be. I'll prove it. That's not bad. So what are the other special bits on the 718 GT4? Well, for starters, there's a limited slip differential and Porsche torque vectoring. Torque vectoring will actually brake selectively the inner wheel on a turn so that you kind of fly out of a turn a lot better than you could if that wheel was spinning full steam ahead. Porsche also has something in the GT4 called Porsche Active Dynamic Mounts, or PADM. It's mounted on the transmission to reduce vibration and prevent, anything from sort of throwing off the flow of the car. That's pretty clever. And for the first time in the GT4, there's auto stop-start technology and cylinder management. So under light load, the GT4 will selectively deactivate 3 of its cylinders, and this flat 6 magical wondrous piece of machinery behind me will turn into a 3-cylinder engine. It does that for fuel efficiency, better gas mileage, all that sort of fun stuff. Fortunately, there's a little button right here that turns off the auto stop start and at the same time gets rid of the cylinder deactivation. Because I don't know about you, but I want all 6 of my cylinders working all the time. The 981 GT4, the previous model, had a fun little feature that would blip the throttle on downshifts to do rev matching. And you'd had a little sport button down here to push for it to do that. Sport would also open up the exhaust and some other stuff, so maybe you didn't want that button on all the time. So now Porsche said, oh, people like that option. They have a little button here called Auto Blip, which will rev match for you. Is it more fun to heel and toe? Of course. Sometimes, like when you're on a track, maybe you don't want to worry about rev matching. You want to really focus on finding that line. So I will have the button on here, and look, it just did that. I didn't have to do anything with the throttle. Kind of cool. Purists will say you're an idiot for using it. I say focus on one thing at a time if you're on a track. So that is kind of cool. Porsche also lets you turn off stability control and traction control. If you want to have a little more play in your rear end, you can do that. And then there's this button, which firms up the suspension. And you don't want to use that unless you're on a flat track. In the real world, it's way too firm. You would be very hard-pressed to find a car that is as balanced and rewarding as the 718 GT4.